Hello, everybody. We're doing the next edition of the podcast, and today I'm really pleased to introduce you to Kelly West from ONLE Networking. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I am very well. Thank you for having me on, Steve.
Fantastic. That's really, really good. So, Kelly, you obviously run a networking group with your husband.
Mhm.
How did that come about?
I quite often ask myself the same thing when I'm awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking of all the things I haven't done as a result of my job. Um, okay, let me make this as short a story as I possibly can. Networking has been an incredibly pivotal point in my world. Okay, I was, probably 22 the first time I went to a networking event.
Um,
I was a travel counsellor at the time. Yes, I was. And I was at the local school doing their fair with my roller banner. And there was a lovely utility warehouse lady opposite me. And she said, "You need to come to this business meeting." I had no idea what she was talking about. Turns out it was BNI.
yeah.
Scared stiff, 22 years old, stood there like a lamb to slaughter, wondering what the heck I'd agreed to do. But I went back and I went back. I
Yeah.
went back because there was something about it that just hooked me in, obviously, and that was the people. Um, that was crikey, 20 odd years ago. Roll that
Yeah.
forward. 10 years ago, I met my husband and business partner James at a networking event. Spilt coffee over him at this coffee station because I really fancied him and I got really embarrassed. There you go, that's part of my story. Um, and we just hit it off straight away.
Yeah.
And we both love networking, but for different reasons. I was probably quite shallow at that point as a 22-year-old networking. I didn't go to get friends.
Mhm.
I had a 2-year-old daughter. I was, you know, not out there looking for friends. I was married and I was 22, like, who needed friends at that point?
Mhm.
How wrong was I? Okay, as that proved over the years. Um, I went for business, was really what I went for. When I met James, 10, 15 years later, um, I was a mother of two. Very
Mhm.
different space. Divorce, like in a different category completely, and trying to promote a different business. James went networking because he was in quite a toxic relationship, had been for a long, long time, and he used his networking group to get out of the house to make him feel better. It was good for his mental health. And if he got business, that was a bonus. Yeah.
Mhm.
I got 74% of my business from networking at that time. So for me, it probably still was slightly more transactional first. But meeting James and networking together, we thought, you know what? And all networking groups are good. You just got to find the one that suits you best. But we really wanted to try and build one ourselves because what we very quickly realized was we were both probably wrong because there's a middle point.
Mhm.
Because business and personal life doesn't balance and it never will. So let's stop trying to do it. As long as it doesn't get stuck in one direction, then you're doing well, in my opinion. And we just wanted to create a space where it was absolutely about the relationship first. Got
Yeah.
to that stage of our lives where friends are important and actually roll that 7 years on, so only 7 years older now, all of my best friends are in ONLE. They're all people that I've met with in ONLE. And I wouldn't change that. I've still got a couple of friends from school, and all of that stuff. But doing your business journey with people really is a special bond that opens up so many more doors. So ONLE for us was a space where people felt safe. They could be themselves, they could be vulnerable, they could look for business opportunities, and they could network with like-minded people. And that's where we are now.
Yeah. It's really interesting you talk about that because um, I know that feeling you described the 22-year-old self. I think mine was a 25-year-old self and my first experience of networking.
Yeah.
And I walked into my first experience was it was a Chamber of Commerce event.
Yes. Yeah.
And I walked into it was in a big hotel and I walked in through the double doors. It was a paint the picture. It was July. It was a hot day. The air conditioning at work had broken.
Oh,
I felt really uncomfortable. I walked in. I
felt
heard,
even more uncomfortable.
you know, that hum as you walk into a room, and you can just hear this of conversation, then riotous laughter, and then more conversation. I literally took one step in. one step to 90 degrees, another step to 90 degrees, and one step back out again.
Did
And that
you?
was my first experience of networking, yeah. And I got home, and my wife turned around to me and she goes, "I thought you were going to be out till a bit later tonight. I thought you were going to some networking thing." I went, "Yeah, hot in the office. Yeah, feel a bit sweaty. I felt a bit uncomfortable, and I because I just didn't bother." She goes, "So you bottled it then?" And I
She
went,
knows you well.
"Yeah, that's right. Yeah." I went, "Yes, I did." And then I went back the next month, because she forced me to go back the next month. And literally I was going to do my sort of my famous 180-degree turn again. And just as I was making my first step, a guy grabbed me and he goes, "Hello, mate. I saw you last month. I've been waiting by the door because I thought you might do this.
Wow.
Come on in, let me introduce you to some people." And I've not stopped since. And I was
Fantastic.
one of like three people to leave the room, and that was probably 2000-ish, around about 2000, something like 2001, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was my first experience of networking, and after that I went into like breakfast networking, and I've
Yeah.
also done the BNI thing and whatnot. So
It's
I
fascinating, isn't it? And I do
is
get it. I can remember my ex-husband, not in a networking way, he was high up in the corporate space, couldn't understand it. Went and subbed for me one day and came back and went, "Kelly, you've joined a cult. I
yeah,
don't get this whatsoever." I'm like, "Don't be ridiculous. It brings in a lot of business. You know, this is we're making connections." He came to a summer barbecue with me once, and again, very sociable guy, but he's like, I just don't get it. Don't
yeah,
understand it. And I still find that. I think people find it really hard to understand what the draw for networking is, because there really is. It is addictive.
yeah.
If you get it right and you enjoy it, you can consume your whole life with networking. You really can.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
really can.
Yeah.
And there are so many events, or so many sort of like, um, I suppose, different types of networking event available. Um, and obviously you've got BNI, which is obviously very structured and very measured and everything that goes on there. And then you've got the other ones where you rock up to a pub, pay
Yep.
your fiver, have a coffee, and talk to people for a couple of hours, and then disappear off, and then go back the following month. So this is really interesting because obviously I am an Only member, and
Mhm.
I've known about Only obviously for a long time, but it's different.
Mm.
So obviously, the first thing, obviously, being online
Yeah.
is a major difference for it. So, what made you? How did you come up with the format for the type of networking that you do? Because it is different and it's great.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I do appreciate that. One of sort of the earliest memories of us coming up with this idea, we were sat um, in Winchester actually, and we were trying to come up with a name for this new networking group, and we were saying, "Oh, we only want it to be this.
Mm.
We only want people to do this." And then I was like, "Let's just call it Only. Right? Let's just have a play on the word slightly and come up with what we did." Our strapline used to be the only business networking you need.
Right. Okay.
But we scrap that really quickly because we don't believe that.
Mm.
We don't believe that. We're super collaborative with other communities. You don't just need us. What we provide is a fully encompassing service, and you can get education, everything you need from that space. But you'd be silly not to go and be part of other communities as well, because why wouldn't you?
Hmm.
There's just a lot of opportunities out there. Um, I think we're very, very much people. Like, I want to get to find out the fun stuff about you before I find out what you do. Like, when you introduce yourself to me, you will lead with what you do. And that's great because I need to know that. But before I get too much into the detail of your job title, I need to know who you are. Because if I don't like you, ultimately, I'm not going to progress that any further. And I'll be smiley and all the rest of it while I'm having that initial conversation, but it's probably not going to go further, is it, if we don't get
Yeah.
that initial establish that initial relationship. I'm really lucky. I actually really do like 99% of the people I meet.
Mm.
I genuinely do. It's very rare that I meet somebody I categorically don't get on with. And I do challenge that piece about you can't give business to someone you dislike. If you like the other person that's going to benefit from that introduction, I can do an introduction in that
Yeah.
space. But there has to be a like piece in there somewhere, doesn't it? I've slightly digressed. But for us, it was 2018 when we launched, and I think we were probably 5, 10 years ahead of the thought process to everybody else. We sort of foresaw that need for relationship and camaraderie and community. And that's what we wanted networking to be. And then if you got an ROI from it and that was a pound sign, that's a massive result. And what we actually saw was how quickly those pound sign ROIs come into play when you build really strong relationships. So it just enforced our ethos even more. We're the business network for people who like people. That's our strapline. If you don't like people, pretend your Wi-Fi's gone down. I quite often say that in the meeting, leave now if you don't like it. I haven't done that for a while, actually. I need to go back to that one. Only ever happened once. I think it was a coincidence, but you never know.
Yeah.
Um, but we jest and we joke, but it is important. Like, I want to spend my life with people I enjoy spending my life with.
Yeah.
And for us, we were in person. We did online networking 2 years prior to the pandemic, so we had a massive head start on everybody else. So we kind of nailed that proposition already. And then hitting the pandemic just made us go, let's just do what we originally wanted to do. I wouldn't be sat here now talking to you. I was on a call yesterday with somebody was in California, somebody was in Alabama, somebody in Scotland. Like that is a whole world that we never thought was probably possible only 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm There was a conversation on there which really made me smile. One of the people said, it wasn't one of our events, but one of the people said, yeah, I don't really get online networking. I just don't see the benefit from it. And I just raised my hand and went, do you think we would all be talking if it wasn't for online networking? And it was almost like the penny dropped as I said it. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's much more to come. If you think it's going to go away, you're very much mistaken. It's
Yeah.
just going to get bigger and bigger and better and better. And I think the more people that embrace it and utilize it and engage in the relationship first approach, the better the result you'll get.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think there's a real sort of fundamental difference now between the way that I'm seeing networking evolve. So, when I first started doing the breakfast networking
Mm.
25 years ago, or however long it was, um, essentially it was very regimented, stand up, do your pitch, chat to people at the end, and then disappear off. Now networking has evolved so much that people are beginning to do different things.
Mm.
Um, and some of it I think is great. Some of it's not necessarily for me, but it works for other people, and that's cool.
Yep.
But you see that different thing. And one of the things I really like about Only is the variety that you have. It's not just, so you've obviously got regional meetings and everything else, and with me being stuck down in the southwest, far in the deep dark southwest,
Far-flung Southwest,
far-flung
yeah.
southwest, you're not obliged to necessarily network in a group that's local to you,
Yeah.
but however you have your local groups, and then you encourage that whole idea of building strength within the network outside of those groups as well. So I think that's a real differentiator from a lot of the networking that goes on.
Mm.
So interesting, it was something you mentioned in a second ago. You were talking about sort of introductions and everything.
Yeah.
How do you advise people to make introductions? Obviously, you and I are both prodigious introducers.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my way of doing it. So, and I think your brain works in a particular way. But what do you do? How do you train your members to do introductions? What advice would you give people who are fairly new to networking?
Yeah.
And what advice would you give them?
This is an easy one for me. I love this stuff. There's two strands here. I am well known and well loved by the members who know me well for just doing random connections because I think the energy of the people will work really well. And I don't really know what the common denominator is, but I just have a feeling that you're going to get on really well and you're going to work that out on the call. Okay. I will always check with both parties that they're happy to be connected in that space because that's quite a tough one. And they are sometimes the best conversations because there's no agenda, there's no possibility of a sale. I'm literally there just to meet you because Kelly thinks I should have a conversation with you. And that to me, I love. You've got to be quite an advanced networker to get to that space, I think.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I can't talk to anyone for longer than 2 minutes and not give them an introduction. I can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. And the reason for that is, and the way people can, learn from this, just listen. Just listen to what people are saying. They will talk about their business. They will talk about the client types that they're looking for. They will talk about pain points that they've got in their own business. They'll talk about the challenges. They'll talk about the wins. They'll talk about current clients, past clients, clients they'd like to work with. That's 8 different opportunities of people you could be introducing just in that 10-second example. I think my record for a 30-minute call was 11 introductions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For one of our members. And I said to him, Alex, bless him, you're a bit of a swine, Alex, because I'm going on holiday tomorrow and I've now got to do 11 introductions and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I literally got LinkedIn open and I went, check your LinkedIn. And I just did voice note connections to him and 11 different people. And I went, sent him as an extra one. And right, over to you.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. Yeah. And, I don't know what happened to all of those conversations. Incredibly grateful. And he mentions it all the time. And the reason I was able to do that is because Alex could help me understand who was a good introduction for him. So I think flipping that question round a little bit, you as an individual need to take responsibility in informing people that you're talking to how they can help you, how they can connect you with people. And I'm still sort of blown away sometimes when I ask someone, well, how can I help you? And they go, oh,
Yeah.
and I think, really? Come on, because I can already think of 5 ways.
Yeah.
Get that answer cocked and loaded. Have that ready, because people in good networks want to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
So have that answer ready when people ask you, how can I help you? Oh, yeah, I really want a connection with Joe Bloggs that works at ABC, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
that's how you can be successful.
I think as well, it's not just, I mean, you've given that example of the 11 referrals that you gave Alex. It's not just that, it's the fact that people don't realize that you probably got a lot of pleasure out of
Oh,
that.
definitely.
It gives you an immense amount of satisfaction, doesn't it? When you introduce somebody to another person and then they ring you back and they go, do you know what? That was an amazing introduction. Thank you so much. And
Yep.
I think that's the thing. It's I don't refer people because I want a pat on the back or I want a commission or whatever it would be.
Nope.
I refer people because, like you say, I think they're either going to get on or they could potentially work together and collaborate.
Yep.
One of the
I
things.
always liken it, sorry, I interrupted you
Okay.
there, but I liken it to sat around the Christmas tree, giving and receiving presents. I get more pleasure watching other people open their presents than I do
Yeah.
receiving them. And it's the same thing in networking for me. Like, if you can help me, fantastic. You're more likely to help me if I've already helped you, though. So
Mhm.
I'm just going to focus on helping you,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
what I enjoy doing.
I love it. I really enjoy it, and I don't think I don't think I would ever stop doing the networking side of things for exactly that reason.
Mm,
I do it in my personal life, I do it in my professional life, and it's just that whole element of doing an introduction that can help. So how do you when you're going about introducing somebody, because again, I
yeah,
think this is something that people probably need a little bit of advice on.
yeah,
How do you go about doing an introduction? So you have a conversation, for example, with Alex. You've had a
yeah.
conversation with him. What happens when you put the phone down or you come off the screen or the Zoom call or whatever? What's the process that you go through?
I'll do one of there's 3 options for me. I'm unusual. I probably have 8 or 9 one-to-ones a day. Like, it's my job. That's what I do. And they are one after the other after the other. So I think a lot of people fall into that trap of over-promising and under-delivering, not because the intention isn't there, but because things happen. They come off of a call, they go on to the next thing, and it's forgotten and they've not written it down. So if that tends to happen to you, there's a couple of things you can do. Either zip it and don't say you're going to make that introduction because you might not have time to do it. Make a note of it and then surprise the person if you're able to do it later. Over deliver rather than under deliver. Do it while you're on the call. I do that sometimes. If I'm back to back, I'll say, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll literally do the email introduction for you now. That's really good because you can say, how would you like me to introduce you? Because that's the hard bit sometimes. It's really hard to do justice in an introduction for people when you're trying to describe them and you don't know what key points that you want to pull out. I do ask people to give me introduction paragraphs sometimes that I can keep in my CRM, and if I'm introducing them quite a lot. But for me, the quickest way and the one that I personally love is a voice note to two people on LinkedIn, just because it's quicker for me. I can get those done in abundance, and it's done, it's out the door. So I think you've got to work with what's best for you. I do try and hold my boundaries on this one. I'm rubbish with boundaries at the best of times, but if I'm doing something to help people, it's got to be done in the way I want to do it.
Mhm.
So a couple of people have said to me before, "Oh, do you mind not doing it on email? Because I prefer WhatsApp." And I'll be like, "No, that's fine. I'll do the email introduction. If you take it to WhatsApp, then that's up to you." Because I used to get in a muddle of, "Oh, we've got that over there, here, there, and ever." So it's about keeping it tight and manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with me, the way I do it is I will speak to the person who the person I'm having the conversation with. I may know somebody who I think you could work with, or whatever, if or
Mm,
there's a potential collaboration opportunity, or I just think you should meet this person. And then I reach out to the other person and I say, would you mind me doing the introduction? And they go, usually, I don't think I've ever had someone saying, actually, I have had once. Someone
yeah.
saying, no, I don't. I know plenty of those. Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. Um, and then I did then do usually an introduction either on LinkedIn, or I'll do an introduction on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Um, and I tend not to do email so much, because with both LinkedIn and WhatsApp, you can see if
True.
there's a conversation starting, and if there's a conversation, and you can just say, okay, well, it has worked, and then now arrange something. Happy days, I can walk away at that
Yeah.
point.
That's
Um,
a really good point, because I think people forget. This is going to sound really negative, and I don't mean it to be, because as we've said before, I don't do it for a pat on the back, but I do want to know that it's been a worthwhile thing. So I don't expect people to come back to me and go, "Oh, Kelly, that was amazing." But it's nice, isn't it, to know that that
yeah,
conversation has started. I actually don't ask people if they're okay with the introduction anymore. I used to, but for
yeah,
me, it was just another step that added another bit of the puzzle I
yeah,
didn't
that's
really,
weird.
yeah, very occasionally I will, if it's a high level contact or somebody who I know is really does curate their network. I will reach out to
Yeah.
them in that scenario and obviously wait. But that's interesting, yeah.
But it's no, again, like you say though, in that point, it's knowing the people that you're introducing as well, isn't it? And it's knowing what floats that person's boat, and actually that kind of thing. I again, a number of years ago, I had a client who was an HR specialist,
Mm,
and I had a friend who was going through a particularly sticky situation at work. And I didn't introduce them to the client. I introduced them to another HR person who I knew, because personality wise, I felt that that person would get on better with the person I was introducing.
yeah,
And as a result, my client was an older person. She was very softly spoken. She was very nice. My friend was quite gregarious, quite loud. And she worked in a very high level corporate environment and everything else, and she was very go-getty. So I introduced her to somebody who was a similar kind of personality, because I knew they would get on and it would
yeah,
work well. And it's about matching. I mean, we all know lots of people who do the same sorts of things.
yeah,
I think a lot of the time it's about understanding the personality of the individual that you're talking to, and the personality of the individual that you're referring to as well, and matching
yeah,
the personalities as well. Because
yeah.
not
And you can
everybody,
only get that from a relationship.
100%,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it all starts with relationship and relationship building. So do you ever sort of train people on how to have one-to-ones? Have you ever tried doing
yeah,
that?
yeah. We have done. That's something that we will do more formally in the coming months. We're sort of just rolling out some training programs at the moment. We're just building an online course for how to network online, basically. And I think it is a skill. Like, I can teach you to network all day long. Like, give me somebody and I can teach you to network. I can't teach you to be a good person.
No.
There's a little asterisk there. I can't teach you personality. I can't teach you how to behave well. I can't do those bits, but I can definitely teach you to network. So, I think the one-to-one piece is really interesting. I was on a call, one of our calls this morning, and we have only actions. So that would be like the equivalent of the slips in BNI, or your ask at a networking event. And bless her, one of the members said, "I always get stuck at this point, and I don't know what to ask for." And I'm like, "Listen, let's stop. Let's just stop there, because if you're thinking that, there's other people in the room that are thinking that. We make it look really easy because we've been doing it for years. We shouldn't assume that you know that stuff. Right, what do you do? This is what you do. This is probably what you want to ask for." And do you know what? The more the world evolves, the more I see people really struggle to know what it is they want,
Mhm.
or don't like to ask for it because they feel like they haven't done enough to be able to get that in return. And networking's not like that. Like, if you're in a good community, people don't care if you've not given anything for a couple of months, because you'll give when it's the right time. Something will happen. We don't point score. We don't tally this stuff up. We trust you to be adults. We know that good people will do good things, but not forced. So I think having a one-to-one, probably the least needed to be taught thing, because I think it's just a conversation. We always say to people, a one-to-one is just a conversation. Talk about the background. We said this earlier,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need to get a bit more in my background. Talk about what somebody's wearing, what colour their lipstick is, whatever, whatever floats your boat. Talk about that, because that will naturally progress into other things. But it's the other bits of networking, the introduction. How can you be helped? um, Conversation starters, maybe. And I would say anybody that struggles to have one-to-one, just have a post-it on your laptop with a couple of conversation starter questions,
Yeah.
just if it falls a little bit flat. And let's face it, you're not going to get on with everyone.
No.
You don't have to elongate a conversation that's not going well. Just shut it
No.
down, move on.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I had, I think, as I said to you earlier, I had a one-to-one with another only member
Yeah,
yesterday,
yeah.
and we just literally spent 50 minutes talking about heavy metal, and
Which no one's ever done.
it was unbelievable. It was, but it was because there was a prompter in the background of the chat that I was chatting to, and I recognized what it was, and it just evolved from there.
Hmm.
But as a result of that, I think I have an opportunity potentially for him. I couldn't tell him about it because I'm under NDA for this one at the moment, but
Hmm.
there's a potential opportunity that could work. And actually, location wise, it's not too far from where he's based in the country as well. So, and
Amazing.
it could be a really, really good opportunity. But it was because the relationship was there. And then we did talk a little bit about work, and we talked, and you get a feeling for an individual, don't you? And you get a
Yeah.
feeling for whether um, you know, they really sort of they A, firstly they connect with you, and B, they really know what they're talking about, and that was just there right from the off.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, what, I would introduce that side of things. So yeah, I think relationship is all about there. But I did laugh and joke and say, well, what we'll have to do is if this does work out, this opportunity does work out, we'll have to bring a big Marshall stack in there, and we can have these board meetings with this big Marshall stack or something like that,
Yeah,
which he was
definitely.
down for, by the way.
It sounds like he probably was. It sounds like he
Yeah,
probably was. You said something key there, and I think this is what people get confused with. I think if you're new, not even new to networking, say the point, Kelly, and then we'll work it out from there. Introductions versus referrals.
yeah,
An introduction isn't a referral.
no,
An introduction is a conversation. A
yeah,
referral is, I think there's a business opportunity here, and they're fewer and far between. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to talk about referrals with somebody, or whatever the opportunities might be. And we talked about introducers. The idea of having introductions to people is to grow awareness of your business, so that when they're out and about and they like you, they're hearing for potential clients,
yeah.
referrals for you. But that first stage is normally the introduction. And I think a lot of people get confused that when they're introduced to someone, they go into sales mode. Oh, this is an opportunity. No, 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 not at that point. That's just an introduction. And that's probably really important to remember.
I think it is, and actually as well, a lot of people get hung up on trying to find referrals for people. So particularly in some of the, I suppose, more referral driven
Yeah.
networks, they get hung up on trying to find a referral and wanting to find a referral. And actually, a referral. how often are you going to come across somebody who has a specific need at that particular time? And this is the same with networking. You don't walk into a networking room or go to a
Mhm.
networking meeting and all of a sudden somebody needs the services that you provide, right? It just doesn't happen.
Doesn't,
It
no.
may happen, but they're rare. Those
Yeah.
situations are very, very rare. And I think this is the attitude that a lot of people make a mistake of when they're first going out on the networking journey. They think they're going to walk into a room and all of a sudden they're going to be bombarded with inquiries because
Yeah.
they're really enthusiastic about what they do and they think everybody needs their services. But it doesn't work like that. And then people walk
No,
away and go, "Oh, that
it
networking is
doesn't
a
work.
waste of time." Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yep.
I've been to 3 meetings and I didn't get any business out of it. Had loads of conversations and people just weren't interested in me.
Yeah.
But they
No,
don't realize that you've got to build that relationship. You've got to be present. You've got to keep going. You've got to get to know people first. Um,
definitely.
it takes months.
Oh,
It takes months.
it can take years, can't it? You know,
Yeah.
in one of our groups yesterday, one of our longest standing members, Jim, he's been with us practically since day one. Like he's pretty unique in his industries in commercial property. He helps with leases and lettings and stuff. I don't know anybody else that does that.
Hmm.
Like anybody I talk to in the networking world knows Jim
Hmm.
because he's the only person that does that thing. And he says, you know, it's that consistency, it's that professionalism, it's showing up, it's doing what you're saying you're going to do. I've never directly worked with Jim, and I don't need to. I work from home, I don't need commercial premises. If I ever did, I would use him. I've introduced him to hundreds of people because he shows up when he's meant to be there, he's on time, he's kind, he's thoughtful, he's great in a one-to-one. I've known him for years. I can refer based on what I see somebody behaving like. It doesn't have to be through personal experience of their services.
Hmm.
And sometimes people get a little bit caught in that. Well, I've never used you, so I can't really refer you.
Yeah.
No, and I wouldn't pretend to have worked with somebody. I would never do that. But I can say, I've never worked with so and so, but I've known them for 3 years. They're always polite, always professional, and I know they get really good reviews on what they do. Have a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's very true as well. I'm exactly the same. There are people that I've referred that I've never worked with before, but I know from other people who've worked with them that they're great.
Hmm.
So you give them that referral and you pass that on.
Yep.
Or another one that I like to use as well is, for me, I've got the mum and dad test, right? And what I say to people is, you know, I trust this person so much that I would refer them to my mum and dad. That's the level of trust that
That's
we have.
important.
And I think that that's the thing. But you have to build, you do have to build the relationships with people. It's relationships. It should be called relationship networking, shouldn't it? Really,
It should be.
rather than anything else. Obviously, you
Yeah.
took the relationship networking to a whole nother level by marrying the bloke that
Oh
you
no.
you threw the coffee over. But that's a different. That's
Can't promise that would
no,
always
no, no.
happen, but you know.
You can't promise that. It makes a good story, though,
It
doesn't
does. Yeah. It's
it?
good for the brand.
Absolutely. The other thing that you said that I think is, and having been to a number of the only meetings and obviously being an only member myself, that you said was really, really interesting a second ago, was the lady put her hand up and asked the question. Now, I love that, and I love that for a couple of reasons. And the first one being you're creating an environment where people feel safe,
Mhm.
and they feel safe to put their hand up and ask a question
In front of a room of
in
people,
front
yeah.
of a room full of people.
Mm.
And that's a testament to the network, because that lady was wittingly or unwittingly showing a vulnerability,
Yep.
but she felt comfortable doing that.
Yep.
And I think that's a massive testament to the network.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, probably hadn't given that as much thought as I probably should have done afterwards, because that's a really brave thing to do.
It is.
A really brave thing to do. And I wasn't actually hosting that part of the meeting, but I stopped the host and I went, "Can we just address that a minute? Because if you're thinking it, there's other people in the room thinking it," and 3 other people nodded. So we just did 5 minutes on what that could be, and we sort of gave them some examples. Again, we're humans. We're dealing with humans. We have to be reactive. We have to know and we have to understand what emotions are playing out in front of us. We buy from emotion, right? An
Yeah.
emotional space. We buy from people. We will be attracted to like-minded individuals, people that we share those things with. Like, let's just show that in the actions that we put out there. Like, we don't have to always be following an agenda. We need to be able to be receptive enough to understand when people need certain things from us. And, you know, that's great for retention. If we're looking at it from a business perspective, it's great from a numbers. But ultimately, it's being a nice person. Like, it costs you nothing to be a nice person. And I think we spent a long time working out what we wanted Only to be. We've got a culture playbook. We worked with Ben Drury, the culture guy. We still, you know, still work with him now, because it sounds really twee, but we just want to be around nice people.
Mm.
And we just want people to feel kindness when they come into the room. And that is what we hear in abundance. Oh, everybody's so kind. Well, it's a real kind environment. And we always do these exercises to say, you know, ask your customers what words they would use to describe you, because they're the words you should be using in your marketing. And we did that ourselves, and kind was the word that come up all the time. And we can't use that. It's a rubbish word, isn't it? And then we looked at each other and went, it's a brilliant word. Why
It's a
wouldn't
great
we
word.
use kind?
Yeah.
And then you lean into it, don't you? Because as a prospective networker, I want people to treat me with kindness. So why wouldn't I want to be in that environment?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I think that that comes through. The other thing as well is, you know, working with business owners and doing the things that I do. I always say to people, if you're running a business, really I suppose the culture of that business comes from the top. And actually, if you're displaying that element of kindness and support, then they're the people that you naturally attract. And the same with a business. If you're a business owner that treats your employees with treats them well, treats them with respect, and all of those sorts of things, it breeds a really, really good culture within what you do. It's what I'm trying to do with Business Boost Academy. It's all about support. And it's
Yeah,
trying to make people have that level of support and feel they've got that level of support. Yes, there's education involved, absolutely, and that's a crucial part of the whole thing. But also, support is equally as important. And I
yeah.
think again within networking, you know, we've all seen it. We've all been in rooms where people have laid a vulnerability bare, and all of a sudden you see those arms go around that individual,
Mm,
and that's a testament to a good network.
it's the
That's a
goosebumps,
testament to a
isn't it?
good room.
Yeah, yeah,
It really
definitely.
is.
And you're right in what you say. And I think every business can take heed from what you're saying there. You know, when we first started, James and I could easily, we were an in-person network then, we would have coffee meetups, one-to-ones with people, maybe a couple of hours, whatever. As we got bigger, it was harder to keep our arms around it. We went online, that then became easier again. It was James and Kelly's network very early on, then only the brand took over. And I'd be in a breakout room with somebody and they'd go, oh, what do you do there? And I'm like, well, I'm the owner of, oh my God, are you? Like, what, you come to the meetings? Yeah, of course I do. That's the best bit. Like, that's
Yeah.
the bit where I meet people. I've never been to a network and the owner's been there. Well, you know, they do exist, of course they do. But for us, it has to filter down to how we behave with people. I can't do 2 hour one-to-ones anymore. I've got 350 members, you know, and I still want to keep in touch with those as and when they need me. I still want to speak to visitors. I still want to grow the community. So as you grow your business, it's about remembering not to lose sight of all those things that you did at the beginning, and you can't do them to the level that you'd like to, because you just don't have enough hours in the day. But I do half an hour meetings now, and if I need a second one, I'll book another one in. And I'm sure at some point I might have to go to 15 minutes, whatever it is. But it's about remembering what got you to where you are and not losing sight of that, because that is so important in any business.
Yeah, it's one thing that struck me with you as well is I've mentioned a number of different members to you, and everyone I've mentioned to you, you went, oh yes, the person who does this, or the person who does that, or the person who does other. And that is incredible to have that, almost like that Rolodex of names in your head of people who do certain things.
Yeah.
And actually, and it but it shines through. it filters down, like I say, it filters down through the network. So what's the future look like for Only? Where are you going? What's the plans?
Oh, well, depends how many layers more makeup I can get on under these bags and stuff. Okay, in an ideal world, so for us, it's a family-run business. Me, James, my eldest daughter, because we've got Kennedy, our youngest daughter, is disabled. So for us, it's always been about managing business and personal life. But in an ideal world, we will grow the UK to cover parts of the country that we don't have. We do need actually one down in the far-flung depths of the southwest. So maybe we'll have that conversation one
Yeah,
day.
at some point.
It's on record. There we go.
Yeah, oh God, I know I'm committed.
No pressure. We've got Ireland coming in a few weeks. We're
Wow, okay.
really excited about that.
A
We've
lot
got
of
a new.
swearing on that call.
There might well be. There might well be. There is a lot of energy going to be on that call. I can tell you now. It already
Yeah,
has 6 members and it hasn't even launched yet. So
right,
it's
okay.
going to be fantastic. There's another London group coming in May. There's going to be a fourth US group. It's just about filling the gaps. I think we need to print off a map, colour in where we are and where we're not, and we need to start filling in those gaps. And again, for us, I think it is about education, because Only is full of amazing people. And if we can educate people just to brush up some skills here or there and enhance certain aspects, I think that's just a win for everybody. And we do that outside of Only as well. It doesn't matter if you're an Only member or not. If we can help you with your networking, it helps everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really, really does.
Yeah,
Well, Kelly, this has been brilliant. I think it's lovely to meet a kindred networking spirit,
100%.
somebody who works in the same sort of has the same sort of mindset that I do. And I'm a big fan of Only. I've been talking to a lot of people about it and saying, what a great network it is. I know I've not been a member for very long, but I have known about you for a very long time. And I just want to sort of firstly thank you for your time. And if people want to get hold of you, have you got
Yeah.
a website and everything else where they can sort of get in touch?
Yeah, so it's the only.network, and only is spelled ONLE. We didn't do ourselves any favors there. Can come along to the website or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm all about having conversations with people. And if you type in Kelly West only, ONLE, you'll find me. And I'm all up for having conversations.
Yeah, what I'll do after this, if you're viewing this on the Business Boost Academy stuff, what I'll do is I'll put Kelly's contact details in there as well, so you can see that. But thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Kelly. I thoroughly appreciate it, and I'm
Welcome.
sure you're probably going off to about another 5 meetings before the end of the
Wow.
day today.
Maybe one or two. Thank you, Steve. It was really good.
No worries. Thank you very much, Kelly. Take care.